Our government has just declared a war. You might have not heard of it, and a lot of people aren't talking about it, but it is a war, and you are the casualty. And I am talking about nothing other than the war on voting, which has been declared with the SAVE Act, which was made to suppress your vote, and the Republicans are out to get your vote. What is the SAVE Act? Now, these few days, I have heard many falsities regarding the SAFE Act. Some people have said the SAVE Act will save us. No, the SAVE Act is an act that saves the elites. The SAVE Act is an act that saves the government's grasp on you. The SAVE Act is an act that saves pedophiles and keeps them in office, such as Donald Trump, who wants to stay from office and who has not shied away from possibly running for a third term. And so, when confronted with these facts, whenever our deciduous despotic government presents us with an act, we need to resolve ourselves to look at it under scrutiny. And so the SAVE Act, on its surface, is an act that requires proof of citizenship for all federal elections. But when your own president says that we need to nationalize voting, you need to question yourself, what does this actually mean? It means that all voting would be done federally. It means that if the government wants, they can put ICE at voter booths and they can intimidate people. It means that the vote is no longer at the state and, more importantly, is no longer in your power. Because here's the truth. Under all federal voter registration, it already requires a proof of citizenship under the penalty of perjury. And the simple fact is that the instances of people voting without citizenship has been done exceedingly rare because there's no even benefit to it. There isn't. And so we need to ask ourselves, what does the SAVE Act truly save besides the grasp of pedophiles such as Donald Trump? So the SAVE Act would require documented proof of citizenship through passports and birth certificate with a photo ID. But it wouldn't require just a real photo ID. Just going into a booth with your real photo ID would not even be acceptable, even if it had a military ID. And so we need to ask ourselves, what is really being done and why? Why are we being held accountable for our own rightful voice? Because this bill would do damages to our state. It would render mail-in voting not possible. Why? Because it wants to make sure that the elites stay in power. If I can't vote and if I need to work and if there is no holiday for me to vote, how can I ever expect to have my rightful dude representation? I can't. And our government needs to change this. Furthermore, third-party groups would be unable to collect registered forms because it would all have to be done in person. So that means that third-party groups would have almost no ability to have their rightful place in our government. Having a change through a third-party group would be void. And so also, nonprofit organizations would lose their ability to register voters online. That would also be manifested through increasing administrative costs due to states and local governments being overwhelmed with in-person voting. And the truth is, our government has made it pretty fucking clear that it does not want to support people of lower income and lower education. This is a deliberate attempt to make sure that students cannot vote, that the poor cannot vote, and that the rich stay in control. It is a deliberate attempt and it is a showdown against the lower working class. And we need to make our voice heard. Because here's the thing, even if you are not part of the working class or you're not poor, let's just take an example. If you are a woman, chances are that you will have a different name than on your birth certificate. Well, this mirrors 69 million American married women who do not have their birth certificate with their current legal changed name on it. So that means that 90% of all women in America would be turned away from voting. But the truth is this, and nobody wants to recognize this. For years, this has been happening. For years. Because even before the SAVE Act, let's say that the SAVE Act doesn't really happen, 34% of all American women can be legally turned away from ballots. Voter suppression has been an ongoing war against the American voter, against you, since the past 75 years. Under Nixon, this began. And so we need to call it out. This happened with our Supreme Court Judge, Lewis Powell. He had something called the Powell Memo. And so he read it to a group, and it read like a fascist war cry because it said that they needed to change the narrative by expunging our votes. What Lewis Powell did through the Powell Memo, he proclaimed that big corporations should pay professors at universities to rewrite history. And so we had tons of Republican intelligence rewriting history. And not only suppressing your vote, but suppressing our American knowledge, which has been kept from us. Because the truth is this, for years and years and years, Americans have been alienated from their vote, lower income individuals, because although it is illegal to racially segregate voting, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And it is legal to segregate against age, against income, against gender, and to gerrymander against it. And this has been happening. And remember, the Republican wants you to believe that there is a war and that immigrants are out to get you. But to this I say, doesn't our government treat us all as immigrants? Our government and a Donald Trump sees you as an immigrant because Donald Trump thinks that America, the American soil, should only belong to him and him only. He doesn't think about the rest of the Americans. He has only contempt for them because that's who he is. He capitalizes upon your misfortune. And I say enough. Because it has been the Republican war cry that illegals are voting. But here is a very funny act. Between 2003 and 2005, Attorney General John Ashcroft launched a $1 million investigation campaign to see over the course of 3 years who voted illegally. Do you know who voted illegally? Only 24 people. And of those 24 people, do you know why they voted illegally? They voted illegally because most of them were rich, white elites who had homes in both states, and so they voted in both states. And they were what? Republicans. That is the irony of it. And we need to make our voice heard. We need to be mad because the truth is we cannot call ourselves a democracy when even our vote does not matter, and historically it has not mattered. In the recent elections, the presidential elections, such as due to the Electoral College, up to 80% of American votes had little to no impact. And so we must bypass this. We must call them on their bullshit. Because ID voting and passport voting has been made, and it has been made to make sure that students in college were not able to vote. It has been made to make sure that women who are statistically more educated than men cannot vote. Because the truth is, your vote does matter. Even though it doesn't have an impact, it does matter. It doesn't matter because it does. Because why would they attack your vote if it didn't matter? Because they fear you. They fear your voice. They want to alienate you from your purpose of doing your civic duty. And that is your rightful purpose as an American. It is what makes me proud to be an American, to do my civic duty. But in a country that has rendered your civic duty to only a ballot, that's not democracy. That is just giving you a little piece of paper for you to play pretend with. And I say, I am done playing pretend. And so, if you want to learn more about this, please read this book, The War on Voting by Thom Hartmann. It has been illuminating, and it has illuminated me how historically our vote never belonged to us. Here's another fun fact. Constitutionally, in the original Constitution, nowhere does it say that the people have the actual right to vote. Nowhere. But you know what? It is time to remake America in the image of its people. The American flag should be a mirror of we the people, not a mirror of the pedophilic elites. And it is time for us to reclaim the flag and to redistribute its meaning alongside the wealth and alongside the votes, and we must redistribute that for we the people. And we need to reclaim it. We should be proud to say I voted. And yet a lot of people can't vote. Why? Because they can't even afford the transportation to go to the ballots. Like, for example, Native Americans on their land voter booths have been placed disproportionately very far away to make sure that they could not vote. And then there is another thing, voter caging. Voter caging happens when our government sends a mail to you saying, "Oh, you're not registered to vote." And if you don't respond, they stripe you away. Then also, historically, what has happened is in many states, when there is a felon, they stripe his name and every name that matches his. Meaning that if there is a felon whose name is John Doe, they will stripe everybody else with the name John Doe. And that is just wrong. We must reclaim our freedom and our liberty and claim it on the rooftops of America. And our youth should be proud to call themselves Americans. But how can they ever hope to be proud when their own nation doesn't recognize them? And I say no more. If you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, but don't subscribe to a channel. Subscribe to a community that represents you and who wants to have your participation. Thank you.